Today we saw Seattle Seahawks running back Rashaad Penny go down with a very concerning left lower leg injury, and this was a very scary one right off of the bat because immediately after it happened we saw him just grabbing at that area in obvious pain, and eventually he had to be carted off of the field. Now, initial reports were saying that maybe this was a lower ankle sprain, whether it be one of those classic inversion ankle sprains where somebody rolls their ankle, or what we've seen with a lot of players lately, it being a high ankle sprain. Unfortunately, there is some news that has come in. It looks like Penny is dealing with a fractured tibia and that surgery is likely. Now, there are a few types of surgeries that can happen in this case, and since some people may not be too familiar with those surgeries and the recovery time that comes afterwards, I'm gonna go ahead and focus on that with this video. Welcome back, sports fans. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Nick Gallo and I'm a doctor of physical therapy. And with my channel, I take a look at sports injuries and I try to explain them so that they are a little bit easier to understand. I also go over what a person should expect when in therapy for those injuries and try to give the most accurate time frame for them to return to sport. If you like this content and you want to see more of it, please hit that thumbs up on the video and subscribe to the channel because I will be making more videos in the future regarding sports injuries, rehabilitation, and other physical therapy related content. Also, if you have any comments or questions, please leave those in the comment section below. Now, we can see in this video right here that as Penny is running to the left there, he's going to be tackled by a number of defenders, but as he is being pulled to the ground, we see that that left lower leg just gets caught up and a defender actually falls on top of it. If we zoom in here and see this a little better, because this isn't the best camera angle, we see that at the end right here, that's when the defender is going to come on it, and it's in a very awkward, twisted up position. Now here I have a model of the foot and ankle, and so in the lower leg, we have two long bones that go down and meet at the ankle joint. The first one being the tibia bone, which is this thick bone right here. Often this is associated with as being the shin bone. That's going to come on down and form the inside or the medial portion of the ankle. And if you feel down in your ankle on the inside, that's that bony knot. And on the outside here is the fibula, and this bone is going to come down the outside or lateral portion of the leg and form that lateral or outside portion of the ankle known as the lateral malleolus. And if you go ahead and feel on the outside of the ankle, that's where that other bony knob is. Finally, we have the talus bone, which is located right in through here. And so these three bones together are going to make up the ankle joint. Now we have some main motions at the ankle. And so the first one is going to be dorsiflexion, where the foot is going to bend backwards just like this. Then we have plantar flexion, where the toes are going to be pointed outwards like that in the opposite direction. As I flip the model around here, we have inversion, which is that classic ankle sprain position where the foot is going to roll in that way. And finally, we have eversion, which is the opposite of inversion with the foot rolling outwards. Now we know, because sources have reported on this, that Penny is dealing with a tibia fracture, unfortunately. Now there are several different types of tibia fractures, and these vary depending on the location. First off, we could have a tibial shaft fracture, and that's going to be higher up, more so in the mid to lower shin area. That's going to be just along that fat or the middle portion of the bone. Then we have one that is actually known as a malleolar fracture because the tibia comes down and it forms this medial portion known as the medial malleolus. And this piece can also get fractured as well. We don't know exactly what type of tibial fracture he's dealing with. However, usually if somebody is going to fracture the medial malleolus here, they would say an ankle fracture. Now, it is very possible that he still has a medial malleolus fracture, but that's something to just keep in mind. One other key piece of information, and this is purely speculation, but right after the play, we see that he's grabbing more towards the top portion of the ankle above the medial malleolus, which would be right in the distal end of that tibial shaft. So as of right now, it's looking like it's more of one of those fractures to the shaft area, but it looks to be the distal shaft. Now, there are a few mechanisms that are consistent with a tibial fracture. The first being that classic ankle sprain where that foot is going to roll in inwards. And as you can see on this model, as I do that, that actually places a lot of compression along this portion of the tibia here. Also, if the foot is going to roll outwards excessively, this is going to place a lot of tension on this area as well, which can also lead to fracture. Then, of course, there are things like blunt trauma where somebody takes a hard impact to a section of the tibia. Based on the video, it's looking like the fact that it actually gets rolled up under somebody and that a player or two falls onto this area of the leg. That could also be it. And finally, something that could also happen is if as he's being pulled to the ground. If the foot is to plant into the turf and there's any twisting or any shearing going up through that bone as well, that can cause something known as a spiral fracture, and that can also be something going through the tibia. So there are a number of different mechanisms for this. Unfortunately, the video is not very clear, but those are typically what we see. One thing that really has not been brought up yet, but is also concerning in this position, is that a lot of times these fractures are not isolated to just the tibia. The fibula can also be implicated. So we'll wait and see if we hear any more information regarding the fibula or any other soft tissue structures, because if the bones are going to be stressed in these positions, of course, also the ligaments and tendons that are located medially or laterally can also be affected. Unfortunately, once again, sources are saying that surgery might be indicated in this case. We're just going to have to wait and see whether or not the bones are in a point where they are malaligned or things like that, where hardware is going to be inserted. But commonly, if somebody is dealing with a tibia fracture that's going to require surgery, there's something that's going to be performed known as an intramedullary nail, or an IM nail for short. Anytime somebody is dealing with a tibia fracture that requires an intramedullary nail, essentially what they're going to do is they're going to be placing a metal rod inside the canal of the tibia. And say, for example, the fracture is right in through here. That rod is going to span above and below the fracture, and then it's going to be anchored there via screws and additional hardware. This, of course, is done just to make sure that the bones stay in place so that it heals optimally. If the fibula also happens to have a fracture as well, then this is the same type of surgical method that is typically used for that. First off, if somebody is post-surgery for a tibial fracture that requires an IM nail, basically what's going to happen is that person is going to be non-weight bearing for 4 to 6 weeks, up until that bone is essentially strong enough to start putting weight through. And a lot of times what the person is doing in this time frame is that they're going to surgical visits to see when that fracture starts to heal. When we get somebody in physical therapy at this time, there isn't a whole lot we can do with them. We're going to be doing maybe gentle range of motion. It really just depends on how much pain and how much swelling the person has. So a lot of times it's going to be maintaining the joint above. So we'll be doing a lot of active range of motion at the knee, because anytime somebody has an injury to a specific joint, the joints above and below can also suffer. So we want to make sure that the person is not having deficits in those joints. At about the 6 week to about 12 weeks, essentially here, the person is going to be weight bearing as tolerated, and they might be wearing something known as a cam boot, which is a walking boot. And we're going to have this because the person essentially is going to need to learn how to walk again. So during this time frame, it's all going to be about learning how to walk again, proper strengthening through that lower extremity. We want to make sure we get full range of motion back. During this time frame, we're going to be doing a lot of balance work, because as you can imagine, the person will not have been walking on this for about 6 weeks. So we'll do a lot of balance work. And then up until about that 12-week mark, that is when we're going to start adding in some sport-specific movements. So as of right now, unfortunately, it's looking like Penny is going to miss a minimum of about 12 weeks. This is typically what we see in the physical therapy clinic. But once again, I always say this, and this is absolutely true. It depends on the person, and it depends on the rate of healing. If I happen to hear any updates regarding Rashaad Penny's case, I'll be sure to update everybody in the comment section, because sometimes they will say how they're doing with their follow-up visits. And if you happen to hear something, please feel free to post that as well. And that's it as of right now regarding Rashaad Penny's most recent tibial fracture. I do wish him the best of luck moving forward. This is a tough one to deal with. Unfortunately, he's going to miss some time, but this is something that a lot of times people come back from without complication. Once again, if you like today's content, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because I will be making more videos in the future. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.